Well, hello and welcome. This is Tydy Tea Time. This is where we talk about what's hot and happening from the world of work. And what's been hot and happening for a while now is the whole return to office debate, the way work is structured, the way we think about work, the way we do work. And lately, this topic seems to be on fire. With me are my wonderful colleagues. So there is Soumya, Pooja, and Kiran. Are you guys excited to be on yet another Tidy Tea Time episode and about
Yeah,
this particular topic?
yeah. It's
As
been a
always,
while.
as always.
Sorry, Pooja, you were saying something?
I was saying it's been a while that we've done this, so it's good to be back.
It's good to be back. So I hope you've got your thinking caps on and ready to debate this because there's so many different ways to look at this one topic because there's so much that's changed, right? Ever since 2020 and the pandemic hit us, it's like everything has been turned upside down. And now suddenly, when things seem to be so-called going to back to normal, people are not sure if they want things to be the way they were before. I think that's the real question today. So, you know, very clearly the battle line seems to be drawn. I'll just quickly talk about what's been happening lately. The most recent being Amazon, where they have mandated a return to office, and some 1,800 odd workers or employees have actually said that they're going to walk out. They're going to stage a global walkout against the return to office mandate. And that's a lot, right? Because, so many companies are now saying that, okay, enough of work from home, come back. And they're facing a lot of pushback. Any initial thoughts on that?
I think Soumya, you're on mute if you're trying to say something.
I said I love it. I think to have mandates in place and for employees to not actually either show up or want to challenge that, I think is a great effort from balancing the employee employer power dynamics there. So for me, it feels like a great thing that people are finding that freedom and choice to actually do this. I don't think we probably had that or explored that before, but now we are.
Hmm.
That's not the angle I was thinking about at all. That's super interesting. But yeah,
Even I didn't think of that at all. I was just, yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, I think the pandemic kind of forced this new angle, this new uh, outlook for people to, because it's not that people haven't been asking for uh, remote work before this, but like especially for example, I mean, if you just take people with disability or something, they've been fighting for having to do remote work for so long, but the pandemic just came and then suddenly everyone's eyes sort of opened to, oh, this is a possibility and this is something that can work, so that way accessibility also has improved a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. Kiran?
Mm.
I mean, there are 2 points. If you think about 1,800 people to the, I think, 100,000 people plus that Amazon kind of
Hmm.
employs,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a drop in the ocean. But nevertheless, like Soumya mentioned, it's good to see that people are willing to stand up. But I think, more importantly, when the pandemic happened as well, everyone did this as a necessity. But very quickly after that, most companies said that, it's probably going to be a short term thing where it's 24/7 remote. There's going to
Hmm.
have to be a hybrid model of some sort. Um, I have a lot of thoughts around that, which we'll probably cover in the next few minutes. But yeah, for me, it's not surprising that people have risen up in a hue and cry, but at the same time, it's not the majority. It's a very, very, very small number when you think about the Amazon workforce.
Yeah. I mean, to that and to what, Pooja, you said, in fact, right? Before the pandemic, before work from home even became a thing, it was like, uh, to draw an analogy, it's like before the television was invented, people couldn't even imagine people in a box, watching them from some being shot somewhere else, and seeing it in their living rooms. The whole idea of a TV was out of the question. It almost feels like work from home was too. If at all, like you're speaking about, of course, people with disability is a completely different category. But then again, you have the caregivers category, and what people fought for then was leave, right? So you had like maternity leave that or paternity leave that people fought for, the right to stay at home and not work. There was never this whole thing of being able to do both, right? And I think that's what is so interesting now. And that's it's great to see that we've experimented. There have been so many experiments, in fact, that have been running over the last 3 years. It's like a worldwide experiment on how work needs to be done now, including that 4-day work week experiment that just happened and concluded recently to positive results, I believe. But it's fascinating to think about what is pushing people to say that we don't want to come back, and what is pushing companies to say that no, we want you back in the office. Like you said, Kiran, it's a small majority of people perhaps raising their voices because the others are probably scared of losing their
Very
jobs.
small minority of people, not
Small
majority.
minority. Thank you.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Small minority that is saying that, but then why are the others not speaking up? So it's a good thing. What I want to do is I want to pose some of the arguments that have been used in, support of return to office. And I want each of you to kind of tell me what you think, right? The number one thing that seems to be coming up a lot is that it's bad for culture. Like if you work from home, and if you're not having those water cooler conversations, if you're not having those, interactions in person, it's bad for company culture. Do you think that's true? Who wants to go first?
I think it's fairly subjective. The problem is the pandemic made the entire workforce look like one, but it's not. There are different types of workers.
Mm.
Even in a company which is 100% software driven and is only producing a software product like us, there are different types of workers. In the traditional world of sales, where I come from, it was very surprising to see sales guys in the office, because if they are in the office, that's a bad thing, right? Versus if you have engineers, them being out was a unknown thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really tough to kind of paint the entire workforce with one stroke, saying, hey, this is got to be the mandate for everyone. It has to be very subjective to the type of worker, to the type of work you're doing. Now, if there are Amazon workers who are required to be on the shop floor to kind of manage the inventory, it's impossible for them to do it from home.
Yeah.
So that does not even come into play from a hybrid, remote, whatever perspective, right? So I think it's very subjective. Water cooler is great. It's great for culture. It is super, super important. People always kind of came back to the office as a homing beacon. Even us sales guys used to come back to the office as a homing beacon, saying, oh, okay, let me get back and speak to my fellow colleagues and friends and blah blah blah. But I don't think it is about the water cooler. I think it is about the kind of work you're doing and what model enables the best work across the board. And so it's not an easy answer. Unfortunately, I'm not answering your question, but that's because it's not easy.
Yeah, because then you're talking about, of course, it is subjective, right? Like you said, but then it's not fair if some people come back and the others don't, right? It's not fair if some people get to come in only 2 days a week and the others have to be there 5 days a week, right? It almost feels like, how do you make sure that everyone feels like they're being treated in the
I
same
mean,
way?
again, fair is a very strong word, because, a sales guy who's been doing it for the last 10, 15 years, does he or she like traveling anymore? 90% of the sales guys will say no. But is it
Mm.
fair that they expected to travel? No. I mean, it's their job, right? So how do you kind of classify fair? Because that's also a very, very loaded word.
Yeah.
Are you doing better by being at a place, collaborating with your colleagues? Then that's the kind of model that should be set up for you and your sort of skill set. Are you better not being in the office? Then that's the kind of model that should be set up for you. So I don't agree with your point that it's fair or not fair to have some people, some not being there. It's just very dependent on the kind of work that you do.
Okay, fair point. Soumya, Pooja?
I've been working from home, not working in an office for three-fourths of my career for now. I think it's been 8 years I'm working this way. I would not say from a point of building connections with the folks around and that facilitating the process of my productivity or my work. I don't think the fact that we don't meet in person as regularly has been a challenge. Uh, but at the same time, the idea that there are those moments when you actually catch up. Maybe that's like an off-site, maybe that's like a hybrid work model where you come into office once in a week, kind of a thing. I think that does, in a lot of cases, also facilitate collaboration. So I wouldn't kind of deny what meeting people in person can do in terms of building bonds, in terms of breaking ice with folks. But at the same time, having worked 8 years this way, I would not say that I haven't had the opportunity to build connections with folks I have till date not ever met.
Hmm. No, fair. But do you think it impacts the larger culture, right? Because here, of course, culture is built up of different relationships, right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, when companies talk about culture, it's not just about that one relationship, it's about overall, right? But values, are those being kind of dripped down to all the employees? Does that, get impacted though?
I think it's an opportunity to create a new way of cultural values flowing through the organization. See, no matter how big a cultural setup you have that flows top down, every team has microcultures, right? So then I think it is how well we nurture those microcultures within teams, and then how that goes from bottom up, maybe flowing into the organization and becoming the structure. I think maybe that top down approach changes then, that, hey, this is what it is, and this is how you follow it, then building like a collaborative thing where you have people who are not working from office, you have freelancers on teams. I've worked with teams where it's completely freelancers who have come together and there's one member within the organization who is kind of leading it, and you're the extended arm of that organization. You carry on those values, the working styles from there, you do pick that up. That
Yeah.
is transferred, so I wouldn't deny the fact that that can't happen.
Hmm. Pooja?
That's interesting. I mean, I'm very much for a hybrid sort of workspace because for me personally, I've that human element. Uh, as much as I'm okay sitting at home and working and have that routine going, I do like the idea of having to go to work even just twice a day or just meeting the people that I might not even be working with, because my team is primarily you guys, but that doesn't mean that we're still a company as a whole that are all working, doing different things working together. So it helps for me personally to be that have that ability to be social um, with my company and
Yeah.
also, but then that said, it's today with all of the advancement like in technology and this whole augmented reality, virtual reality, AI and all, like there's that collaboration in that sense. I don't know where it's gonna go, like I as much as I stand for the whole human interaction,
Yeah.
I don't know what this whole advancement in technology is, how that also is going to change um, this whole human element to the workplace. So that is something um, I'm like it's a food for thought kind of thing. But personally, I'm definitely for a hybrid
Right.
workspace.
I think a lot of people are actually saying that you have Meta, Google, IBM, Goldman Sachs, like name it, all of these guys, or in fact Apple, are saying let's go to a hybrid model, which is a few days a week in the office. Rest of the time, you can be, of course, there's the outlier, and there are many like, the outlier that I'm going to mention next, which is Twitter, where Elon Musk pretty much went out and said that if you're not in office for 40 hours a week, it is
Yeah.
as good as you resigning, right? He's very clearly said that. And there are many companies saying that they're just not getting as many headlines as Twitter would. But a lot of these giants are saying that it's a hybrid model that we're pushing for, because they believe that, you can be productive, more productive, if you have those touch points through the week, and then rest of the time you work from home. For example, Kiran, like you said, right, the sales guys come back, they touch base, there's a lot of connection there, they're up to date with what's happening within the office, and then they go out and do their thing, versus engineers who maybe were expected to be in the office, but I think they're one group of people that again, this is something you have to educate me on, is where they require a lot of solo work, and the office is usually a place of full of distractions. Do you think that plays a role somewhere? Should they be in the office or outside?
I mean, no, not at all. I think engineering is not a solo job at all. If it is, then there's a fundamental problem with that engineer. It is probably the most collaborative sort of role possible, even more than maybe marketing and sales or any of that, right? Because you can't write one line of code in isolation and then assume that it's going to work with the 99 other lines of code that someone else has written, right? So I don't agree. It's not at all a single
What about
person.
other solo jobs? Jobs that don't require you to be in the office, and the office is actually like, people walking into your cabin, cubicle, desk, whatever it might be, butting in while you're trying to think, or while
I
you're trying to
mean, if
write.
by that question, is a CEO's role a solo job?
Hmm.
Is everyone walking into my cabin and talking to me a distraction, or is it a necessity?
You tell me. I don't
I'm
know.
asking you from your perspective.
You tell me, because I think a CEO's job is to ensure. I mean, you're a manager. A manager's job is to work with different people. So you, by dint of being a CEO, have to be, in a place where everyone can talk to you, and you can, be available to everybody. It's a very different kind of role, right? Versus, for example, Soumya, who is a writer and probably needs to put aside. Again, I don't want to speak for you, but need to put aside a certain number of hours to do your thing. Again, how do you, balance that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as you said, as leaders, it's very important to be there with the team, right? Wherever the team is. Um, but I think you mentioned hybrid, and that many companies are using the term hybrid, saying, let's work a few days here and a few days wherever else you want. I think that's just companies being very concerned or scared about saying, I want you back in the office 24/7. I mean, not 24/7, but 5 days a week, right? I think hybrid is a nice to have word today, which very politically right way of saying, you need to come back to the office. But yes, now that you've gotten used to sitting at home, I'll give you a day or two to kind of sit at home and do this. But if you were to ask all the companies that you mentioned who are saying hybrid is the way to go, I think their ideal answer would be, I want to go back to pre-pandemic,
Hmm.
because I don't think as an organization it is very easy to thrive um, being remote. I think every time remote happens, it starts creating a lot of collaborative issues. And in most of the companies today, there is a ton of collaboration that's required in order to kind of grow, especially when you're building software, when you're building, multiple products. I mean, I'm not even getting into manufacturing, because if you're not on the shop floor over there, there's no product. So you have to be there. But I think hybrid is just a nice to say word in today's economy.
I don't think people throw that around lightly, but you're right. I mean, it is because they know there's going to be pushback, and there's pushback for a reason, right? Because again, we're talking about a world where, to Soumya's point right at the beginning, employees are speaking up about how they want work to be designed. It's about, being more people centric rather than being led by companies, right?
I mean, I'm all for that, but that doesn't mean that you can do your work sitting in a cave, right? And
Say
I think fundamentally the problem with remote has been that while it has been great for people to understand their work hours and work around how they want to kind of spend their day, and still be productive. The problem is when you have 50 people doing 50 different times and 50 different things at different points, it becomes very tough for those 50 people who are building the same product to come together in a day to kind of have a collaborative sort of work environment, right? And that is the problem. When you scale, that starts becoming the problem, because then you suddenly have 50 custom sort of is happening. And then how do you make sure that those 50 people who have to work together to build the product actually come together to build the product? That is the problem that remote has created, which is what companies are facing. It's not anti-human, it's not anti-employee, it is none of that. It is just the fact that when you have multiple people on multiple timelines, it becomes very tough to collaborate.
With that said, and I mean, again, Pooja and Soumya, feel free to, also chime in. A lot of companies, though, there are who are speaking up in support of, and their whole point is that we've made it work. We've made it work. In fact, we've found great results in terms of, people's personal lives. This whole idea of how, some people say that you need an office for work-life separation, because you come to the office to work and you leave the office and then you're done and you work from, you are doing your own thing, you're leading your personal life, which I don't think is true, by the way, in today's world, because our phones and laptops come home with us. So work follows you everywhere. So that separation has not happened before, and it is not going to happen going forward till people start drawing these boundaries themselves. And maybe it's tougher to do to separate work and life when you're working from home, right? Do you guys find that at all?
But isn't it more productive to actually have a 9 to 4, and after 4 you don't do
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
right?
I'm all for it. But that's what I'm
So,
saying. But people are saying that, it is, there's both sides to the argument. So,
Yeah, I feel like work life integration works best for me, right? Not a 9 to 5. I think when I have those times when I have to sit and do the work and not have the flexibility, that kind of, I think, stops me. So there are days when I'll probably sit up late in the night. There are days when probably I work on weekends, I don't work on a weekday, whatever that is. I think for me, more than work life separation, what's worked is work life integration. And I want to believe there could also be more folks like that, right? For whom, uh, as much as my work might follow me home, I want to be able to make time for the rest of my life to, kind of integrate with my work as well. It can't just be work coming with into the rest of my life. It has to be like a flow. So I think for me, what I work towards is work life integration.
Pooja?
Hmm. I think I've tried very hard to be a separator, but I feel like I'm more of an integrator because 9 to 5, as wonderful as that sounds, I think I don't have the ability, or it's not about ability. It's just the what do you call, headspace to sit for that many hours and do consistent, like 100% productive work. I do, I mean, take breaks in the middle, and because considering we work from home, it's not about a distraction. I live alone, so I don't have too many distractions. The distractions are purely created by me, if anything. So in that sense, I mean, this whole, I understand the work life separation being uh, uh, a challenge because I mean, for me, I don't see it. I don't see that uh, differentiation so much, but yeah, it could be something that is of a big concern.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, on that front, I think one of the things that I personally believe in a lot is, and we kind of touched upon it earlier, is the way work used to be done before did not do caregivers any favors, right? It didn't do, and especially, and I have to say, parents any favors, moms any favors, because often in many homes, the mother is considered to be the primary caregiver, right? So you had to kind of design your life around work, and the requirements of work. Maybe in some, again, it's so subjective, right? In some cases, it was great because you could have those boundaries that, okay, once I've dropped my kid off at school, for example, at 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, I start work, 5 o'clock, I mean, at some point the child will go off to daycare, and then 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I am back home and I cook dinner and I, you know, change hats and become mom instead of manager or whatever it might be, right? And I don't think that worked because life doesn't work like that, right? Life doesn't fit into a 9 to 5, unfortunately. And the pandemic kind of brought that into the fore, that it was not working for a lot of caregivers. It was working for a lot of people whose sole purpose or sole focus might have been work only. But it wasn't really ideal. So I think that's interesting as well to see where this is going to go now. Because I mean, you want women back in the workplace, and this is one way of ensuring that they stay or they come back is to give them that flexibility, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think going back to, because I'm also very curious about the entire collaboration bit that Kiran spoke about, right? That is, everyone says that's the biggest challenge around working from home or working from anywhere. But maybe we have like the field sales team, like organizations that have a large field sales team, or yeah, I think those kind of folks have always kind of tried to work around what collaboration will look like when people are not in office. So is that really a solution around collaboration that is in favor of not being in office together at the same time?
No, it's not. I mean, it's two very different roles. I mean, a sales guy, for example, the collaboration a sales guy needs to do is go and speak to the product head, go and speak to, maybe the pre-sales engineer, whoever it may be. It's very point based kind of collaboration. But
Right.
if you have a 10-person dev team who's working on one product or one module, 8 of them are very comfortable coming to the office working from 9 to 6, whatever it may be, and then you have one guy who comes at 7 at night and is willing to stay all night. There is a massive disconnect, right? Even over there, even something as simple as that. So again, I want to reiterate, it is not about the workplace, it's not about the hybrid, none of that. It is, how do you find the ideal situation to kind of be able to collaborate and build together, because that's what becomes critical. Because in that team of 10 people, if that one guy keeps coming and only staying nights, whereas everyone else is staying through the day, it is a big collaborative challenge. It is a big productivity challenge, and for managers that becomes a big problem.
And not to forget, there's also been talk about how those people who are seen, the people who do show up when, say, leadership is in the office, those are the
Yes.
guys who are going to be favored, right? Those are the guys who are going to get the
I don't think
promotions.
that's the same. I mean, that's a different conversation. That has
No, of
nothing to do
course.
with
I'm talking
hybrid
about being
or,
seen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think what you say is very specific to teams, then, Kiran. It does not kind of apply to everyone. But then you're establishing that there are these specific teams, like folks on your production floor who need to be there physically. People on the front line in retail space need to be there physically. So I think there
Yeah.
are some folks like that who probably can't because of what their job entails. But then for the rest, right? Would you do you see that the rest of the world, except for these folks that can't like choose to be work from
Who is
anywhere?
the rest? In your mind, who is the rest? Because you mentioned shop floor and you mentioned retail
Mm,
shop floor and manufacturing shop floor. I talked about software developers and the fact that the team has to collaborate. Even if it's a 100-person company or a 10,000-person company, a team of 10 have to be together to collaborate. And this goes back to what Debbie was saying earlier. Is it fair to have different structures for different teams? I think it really has to be that way. It cannot be any other way. There may be a certain set of people who have to kind of come together and collaborate, and certain set of people who have to come to a place in order to do their job, versus some others don't. And I think that kind of is unfortunately the truth that is going to prevail. So which is why I said, when companies say hybrid, it's just a really easy way of saying, we'll try figuring it based on your role and your location and your skills.
I have a very pointed question for you, Kiran. And this is, to do with, companies that are fast growing like ours, right? Does it impact valuation, how you structured your team?
No, not at all.
Because there have been time, I mean, I saw some articles talking about how, they do look at whether you are entirely remote or hybrid or
No, not at all.
um,
You could be a
okay.
100% hybrid company growing at 10%, you're not attractive. You could be a 100%, in office company growing at 10%, you're not attractive. It doesn't matter. It's about the growth and the speed and the revenue and the customers that valuation is very much dependent on. It's really not about the team.
Okay, great. That's good to know. So, last closing statements. What will the next, say, 6 months bring us? Because we shouldn't really look too far ahead. Maybe 6 months is also too much. Will it be, this hybrid, which, Kiran, like you're saying, is this convenient way to kind of say we will see how each team can work? Or will there be a stronger mandate for a return to office full time, like it was pre-pandemic? Or will it be, will companies back down and say, okay, work from home it is?
I don't
Tough
think
question.
anyone's going to say work from home. I think that'll be a very, very, very small number of companies who will say 100% work from home. It'll be pretty much hybrid to be in the political Switzerland of this. So it'll definitely be hybrid. There will be more and more companies who demand, and demand is the right word, teams to come to the office or to a certain collaborative area depending on their roles. I think you'll see that happening much more, but it will still be under the guise of hybrid.
Hmm. Samya and Pooja?
Yeah. I'm for
It's very
hybrid
interesting.
as well. Go ahead, Samya. You were saying.
Yeah, I think hybrid is the midway here for employees and employers right now. But I also have this feeling that there have been a lot of organizations that's mandated, not even requested employees to come back. They have mandated employees to get back to office. And even though, like, I think end of 2022, we saw a lot of people return to office. If you see data, that has kind of plateaued. People aren't actually kind of getting back to office in the way that organizations would have expected them to. So if this war for talent, if the labor market is going to be like, if the power dynamic there still lies
Yeah.
in the hands of employees in the next 6 months, then we are going to see a lot more of this debate and this conversation, new policies coming in, maybe in a way that keeps employees happy as well. Uh, that's what it is. That's my point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pooja?
I mean, yeah, hybrid as well. But I'm curious to see because this is still that very experimental time for all companies to see what works and what doesn't work. And to Kiran's point, I mean, all that he said made sense to me, and maybe companies will start realizing that maybe this hybrid thing isn't. It's just a word that we're using, and um, but I feel I would like this hybrid direction to work a little more if possible. But I don't know. There could be pushback. So, like a lot of companies, I feel might push back
I
on it.
I think I agree with Pooja. I want to really see success stories around hybrid work coming out. I want to know about them and I want to know what worked for them. And hopefully I want to see it happen because I really think that flexibility helps a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially I think in the last 7 8 months I've been around folks who are taking care of their kids or their parents, and I think it makes a lot of difference to them, and I don't see their productivity being affected by the fact that they are also taking care of certain responsibilities. So I think it's a move that I would love to see happen.
And the pessimist in me believes that I would like to see it succeed too, don't get me wrong. But the pessimist in me believes that quietly it's already happening, I feel, where companies will just mandate it. We won't even know what's happening. A lot of people are not going to say no because, we are in a slightly unstable environment right now. We're not sure about what's going to happen. So that power balance is not really working in the favor of employees as much as we'd like to say it will. And at the end of the day, it's about, do you want the job or not, right? It comes down to that, unfortunately. So let's see. I'm talking about the
I,
next 3 months.
I think also the problem with just my closing statement is hybrid is a word that's been thrown around a lot. No one has clearly defined what hybrid can mean. Is it 3 days in the office, 2 days in the office, 1 day in the office, 5 days in the office, half a day every day in the office? What is hybrid, right?
Hmm.
Hybrid can mean a lot of things. So I think unfortunately that's where also the kind of clarity is lacking in terms of hybrid. As I said, it's just a word that's being used today in being politically right. Um, and I like all of you all have said, I think there will be more movement towards more teams coming into the office in the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. Well,
But
on that note, I mean, we don't have a sure answer, but it's going to be interesting. We have to wait and watch and see. And maybe we'll talk about this again once there is more clarity and we see, how things proceed in the world of work. So until next time, that's all for from all of us on Tidy Tea Time. Do join us again next week on Thursday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much.
Bye
thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.